All right, welcome to the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm Aaron Breitman. This is my rapid reaction to Rutgers' 35-16 loss to number one Ohio State on Saturday, coming to you a little bit after the final result. So let's start with the negative, with the criticism. That's fair. At the end of the day, Rutgers made too many critical mistakes to win the game. They had 6 trips to the red zone, which, to be honest with you, is amazing. I can't even believe it. But they only scored 1 touchdown. And when you look at what this could have been potentially, that's the story of the game. 1 touchdown and 6 red zone trips. You're just not going to win against most teams, let alone Ohio State, who is number 1 in the college football playoff rankings. They're number 3 in the AP poll. You could say all you want that they're not the number 1 team or they're not that great. I mean, they're still Ohio State. And in the second quarter, Rutgers dominated in a lot of ways, but when they got into the red zone, they were unable to punch it in. They got 3 field goals, 20, 21, and 22 yards. I don't know if that, I'm sure it's happened before, but that's crazy. And credit to Jay Patel for converting, but very frustrating that Rutgers was unable to get into the end zone there. And instead of a 9-7 lead at the half, which is, progress and remarkable in its own right, really left a lot on the table for Rutgers going into the second half. Now, that first drive of the third quarter, you have the ball, you're up 9-7, you're driving once again, you're in the red zone once again, and then once again, a backbreaking pick six. I know people are saying there's a lot of criticism. There was a terrible play call. I don't dislike that was a pass. I know that Rutgers was running it down Ohio State's throats, but I think part of why Rutgers was unable to score in their previous red zone trips is it's really hard to run it inside 20 yards. And I think it was good recognition to try to pass it. I think the call itself was very risky and was not executed obviously well at all. Wimsatt kind of did a step back jump pass to traffic in the middle of the field. Monungai kind of lost his balance. I know there was somewhat of a questionable non-targeting call there. I don't think that gets called much. And I don't know if it was intentional targeting or not. It was certainly debatable, but I wouldn't say it was a blatant no call against Rutgers. But it was a questionable pass, questionable play call itself. Again, I don't hate the pass play in terms of calling the pass, but I don't like the play itself. At any rate, a 93-yard pick six once again, backbreaker against Michigan, backbreaker against Wisconsin, backbreaker today against Ohio State, changed the game. Ohio State took the 14-9 lead. They get their offense gets the ball back very soon after. It goes down, scores a touchdown. They're up 20-9. And that was too much to overcome. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 2 big touchdown catches at the end. That last one, Rutgers had turned it over on downs because they were going for it deep in their own territory. This game was much closer than the 35-16 final score. I think anyone that watched this game knows that. I think anyone that watched this game, I know moral victories. We don't want to talk about them. So let's not count it as a moral victory. Let's count it as the first time we've ever played Ohio State where we have a right to be pissed off and frustrated that Rutgers lost the game because they were in the whole game. They competed. They didn't just physically match up. They physically beat Ohio State at times. The offensive line was pushing that front four back. Pat Flaherty, give him his flowers because, the Rutgers offensive line bullying Ohio State in the run game. They were the first Big Ten team to rush for over 200 yards against Ohio State all season. They ran for what, 200? Is it 239? 232 yards. Kyle Monungai, absolute beast, ran for 159 yards, 24 carries, 6.6 average. Fifth 100-yard game of the season. He's on the cusp of the first 1,000-yard rushing season for Rutgers since Juwan Jamison in 2013. But Rutgers ran the ball against Ohio State in a way that was, remarkable. It was amazing to see the offensive line of Rutgers bullying Ohio State at times. Physically, Rutgers, we saw them match up against Michigan. We saw them match up against Wisconsin. We saw them match up against Ohio State. It's execution. It's learning how to beat good teams. and really good teams. And Rutgers, that's the next step. They're not there yet, but they are physically there. And this team doesn't quit, and this team is tough as nails. I mean, they are really tough. And honestly, they're fearless. They just continued to battle. They did not fall apart. Even in years past, 21-9 last season. I mean, we saw what happened when they led Michigan at the half last year, and they completely fell apart in the second half. They did not fall apart in this game. They missed opportunities. They made critical mistakes, but they kept battling. And Gavin Wimsatt, let's talk about him. Yes, he struggled with accuracy at times, specifically the first half, missed his first 5 passes, missed by a lot. But he was able to make some big throws in some big spots, and he's done that all year. And he's got to be more consistent. He's got to be better with his accuracy, but he still makes some throws that, are big time throws. And that touchdown pass to Jaquay Jackson was a beauty. It showed resiliency. It showed toughness. And he just continues to battle back. And he also, I think, when they were able to run him, he felt more comfortable. He got into a little bit of rhythm. I feel like when he's able to run the ball for big gains, it gets him kind of his confidence up, and he throws better. He just does. He almost had a second touchdown to Ian Strong late in the game. He almost had it. He lost possession at the last minute. And they turned it over in downs in fourth quarter. But, if Rutgers scores that touchdown, it's a one-score game with 7 minutes to play. So Rutgers gave Ohio State pretty much everything they could handle in this game. It was just a matter of not being able to convert in the red zone, and it really was Rutgers not being able to do it. It wasn't really anything Ohio State did to Rutgers. I mean, obviously their defense is top 5, whatever, nationally. I think they're number 4 nationally. So their defense had a lot to do with it. I'm not saying they didn't, but you could very reasonably be frustrated that Rutgers was unable to take advantage of opportunities. Not that Ohio State, beat Rutgers in a bad fashion. They didn't. I mean, Ohio State won the game, right? They deserved it. They earned it. But I mean, Rutgers had a chance to win the game fair and square. Like they gave them all they could handle. In terms of the defense, I thought they showed that they're a top 5 Big Ten defense. You take away that lead score with Ohio State got the ball basically in the red zone, and the pick 6, that's 21 points. Ohio State is not the best offense, but the first touchdown they allowed came off a muff punt. Every time this is the difference, and this is what Rutgers has to take a step forward in, is that when they're playing good teams, right? When they played those 6 games that they won, when their opponents made mistakes, Rutgers took advantage. When Rutgers plays really good teams, they're not able to take advantage as much, and those other good teams are taking advantage of Rutgers' mistakes, and that's a huge key. And when Rutgers muffed the punt, Ohio State went down pretty easily and scored a touchdown. That was their only touchdown, until the pick 6 midway third quarter. So the defense, I thought, represented really well. They were out Tyreen Powell. I thought it cost them a little bit when TreVeyon Henderson had a huge game. He had 200 yards, all-purpose yards, 120-something rushing, and 80 yards receiving. He had a big catch, and the linebackers kind of out of position there. I thought they missed Powell in that case. And then Maya Hanatu didn't play as well. He was out. But the defense held up well. The corners held up well. Longerbeam had some big plays. Melton got a little banged up at the end, but I thought they both, held up really well. Flip Dixon had a good game. I didn't even look at defensive stats in terms of that regard. Motoray had that great sack at one point. Deion Jennings, 13 tackles, 7 solo, 1 tackle for a loss. Teray had 8, including a sack and an interception. So hats off. I mean, Motoray's been fantastic all year. Longerbeam had a good game. Like I said, Aaron Lewis had 7 tackles, a pass breakup, and a tackle for loss. A lot of contributions up and down the defensive front. So I just, I was almost in shock at some point because it was just such a weird game in the sense that you felt like, Rutgers should be winning this game by a lot more. It was Ohio State, and Ohio State beat Rutgers their first 9 meetings 53-11 by an average score of 53-11. And Rutgers should have been up multiple scores at the half. And a lot of times games are lost in the first half. And Rutgers made some critical mistakes in the second half, including that pick six, and it did completely shift momentum. However, leaving points on the board, you can't do that when you play a top team. And that's what ultimately cost Rutgers in the red zone. But if you look at the last three games of the regular season, there is no doubt that if Rutgers can play at this level and or continue to improve, they could win all three of those games. This certainly looked like a better team than we even in this loss. This team's getting better and better. They obviously benefited from the bye week. By the way, that fourth down conversion, the Kyle Monunga had, I think it was a 45 yard run where Wimsett basically snapped it snapped it again to Monunga for that kind of trick fourth down play. Shiano called it a bye week wrinkle. That was really creative. I love that Shiraka went for a deep ball on the first play from scrimmage in the game. The play calling definitely was more aggressive. Like I said, you can question that pick six in terms of the play call itself, but it was a game in which it was bizarro land, right? Because Rutgers has shown major progress and really should have been winning that game by more, and it just brings encouragement for the rest of the season. Now one thing I'm worried about is this was an extremely physical game. Hopefully Rutgers isn't too banged up from it, but also just from a physical hangover perspective, Rutgers has to bounce back pretty quick because Iowa's going to be really physical. But there's no doubt that going to Iowa, they have a real chance to win that game. Talent level is not nearly as, of a difference as it is against Ohio State. I mean, Rutgers was competing and giving Ohio State everything they could handle. And these are all 4 or 5 star guys. And Rutgers doesn't have nearly the amount of talent that Ohio State has. And they left it out all on the field. So emotionally, mentally, physically, Rutgers has to bounce back real quick because they're going to go to Iowa City and they're going to have a real chance to win that game, a real chance. And then, listen, you go to Penn State. Penn State is not better than Ohio State. And if you can learn from some of these mistakes and you can execute better, they're going to go in there with confidence. They're going to go into Happy Valley with confidence. And then you have Maryland at the end of the season. So based on how they played today, I would be shocked if Rutgers doesn't win at least one of those games. And I think it's fair to say they have a shot in all three of them, a realistic shot to win all three of those games. This team is certainly, I think, skipping steps in terms of progress. I think they're better at this point of the season than anyone could have expected. And I'm sure some people expected it, but maybe it wasn't reasonable to expect that. And you're seeing the influence of Jay Butler, the strength and development coach. I mean, Rutgers physically is just so different this year in such a positive way. Pat Flaherty, offensive line coach, phenomenal. Just in terms of what this offensive line is doing, really. Today proved it that the offensive line was battling and winning battles on a consistent basis. To run for 232 yards against Ohio State, it's unbelievable. Probably the craziest stat of the game. The fact that Rutgers, they had 22 first downs to Ohio State 15. They outgained them. Was it 361? They outgained Ohio State, which is pretty amazing. 361 to 328. They outgained first downs 22 to 15. Time of possession 35-37 for Rutgers. Ohio State had the ball just over 24 minutes in the game. Penalties, Rutgers had just 3 penalties. Ohio State had 5. Third down conversion. Ohio State was struggling. They were 0-5 to start the game. They finished 6-12. Rutgers was 4 of 13. So that was obviously, a factor. Each team had a turnover, and each team had 4 tackles for loss. But at the end of the day, there's a lot to be encouraged by, right? It won't call it a moral victory. We'll call it a legitimate reason to be frustrated and disappointed that Rutgers lost the game, which, hey, that's progress. Playing against Ohio State, you lost by an average of 42 points in the previous 9 meetings. And you could reasonably walk away from this feeling like Rutgers should have won the game or had a chance to win the game and put themselves in a position to win the game. And they faltered. But there's something to be learned from this. There's something to step forward from this. And I'm super encouraged. It was an inspiring performance. It really was. And this team's going to win at least one more game in November, and obviously depending on the bowl game. But this sent a message. I think I'm really curious to see what Ryan Day says after the game, and I know Coach speak and such. But I mean, Rutgers really made a statement today. I think they're going to get even more respect now. And if they go into Iowa City and win that game, and they're 7-3 going into Happy Valley, I mean, it's on. It's legit on in terms of this team being a good team. And they're close. I think they're close. So that's my rapid reaction. I babbled a little bit, but I probably missed something. Follow all my coverage on scarletfaithful.com. After the game, I'll have plenty of post game tonight and tomorrow. We also have wrestling post game out already. We have plenty of men's basketball preview coverage as well. Thank you for listening and watching the Scarlet Faithful podcast once again.